Welcome to Black Unquiet Minds, the podcast that amplifies the voices of individuals from diverse backgrounds as they bravely share their stories, struggles, and hopes for a better future. I'm your host, Marius Lancaster, and in each episode, we delve into the depths of intersectional identities and the challenges faced by those living in America. Today, I'm excited to introduce you all to tonight's guest, Santana Williams. Santana boasts a formidable 14-year tenure in the field of education. Presently, she serves as an intervention specialist for Cincinnati Public Schools, while also having previously garnered invaluable experience within various public school systems in Ohio and Virginia. She is also a distinguished alumni of Berea College, a liberal arts college nestled in Berea, Kentucky. There, in 2008, she obtained her bachelor's degree in psychology. Subsequently, Santana embarked on a relentless pursuit of specialized coursework, enabling her to acquire the necessary credentials as a licensed special education teacher. And in 2012, Santana embarked on an immersive journey through seminary, cultivating in her attainment of a master's in divinity from Regent University, located in the city of Virginia Beach, Virginia. And in 2015, now having returned to Cincinnati, in 2015, Santana continues to fervently advance her contributions to the field of education, both as an esteemed educator and as a passionate scholar. Currently, she's pursuing her doctorate, poised to make a profound impact with her dissertation titled A Seat at Their Table, an ethnography of Black educators' experiences with anti-Black racism in the workplace. I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to sit down with me here and to discuss some of your journey thus far, and some of the ways you see forward for others who have walked a similar path as yourself. All that said, I want to dive straight into a question that instantly comes to mind when I hear your educational background and ask, how did you come to find your why in the field of academia? And what were some of the things that kept you going as you went into higher education and began to encounter spaces or situations that made you feel as if you may not belong there as a woman of color?
So first, I just want to say thank you for having me here. And I'm honored to be a guest on your podcast. This is amazing. But to answer your question, my why, I think of education, kind of as this maze, right? That as a Black child, you are kind of put in the beginning of, and you're told start, and then you don't really know it's a maze. No one really tells you that. And you just kind of find and navigate your way through, and along the way, you might meet other people that have had similar experiences to you that can help guide you around some pitfalls and difficulties, but ultimately, I don't think that it is constructed for you to meet those people. It's almost like you have to seek those things out from time to time. So as I thought about my education journey and how, much experience I've had in different education systems, with my father being in the military, I lived a lot of different places and experienced a lot of different cultures, a lot of different systems. The one thing that was the commonality in all of those experiences was just how hard it was for me to be my most authentic Black self, my most authentic Black self as a girl, just traversing through the world in a society that sees you kind of like at the bottom of this totem pole, right? So as I, became older and got to higher ed and was having these same experiences, they're just, kind of packaged a little differently. I found my why. And so I graduated in 2008 with a degree in psychology. And if anybody knows anything about 2008, that was recession. Oh, so yeah. I had this degree. I had no debt. Shout out to Berea, because I did have a full ride, and any student that gets into Berea gets a full ride. So, I'm zero debt down. I'm out. I'm ready to go into this job, ready to just conquer, but we're in a recession. So here I am. I'm kind of, working at Dillard's. I'm just like making it. And I started substituting for this company called CSEP, and they worked with special needs children. And I just love special needs kids. And I just developed a love and a passion. I'm like, I'm going back to school to teach. And that's how I became a special educator. But I think about my experiences, and I just think about how there are not many of us in this field. We are in a field of education, about 94-ish, might be a little bit more than that percent, don't quote me because I don't have it in front of me, but about 94% of our teaching workforce is white, which is a lot. So when you think about being in a room of 94, 100 people, 94 of those people are going to be white, and then there's going to be like 4 or 5 of you. And that's really crazy, right? When you think about it in terms of that. But there need to be more of us. But I think the path to getting here is it's so much. It's so many hurdles. It's so many inner workings that you have to do to really, truly dig your heels into education as a Black educator that I think a lot of people are just like, I'm good. I'll go do something else. So I find my resolve in that. Like, I'm more way or less like kind of paving a way to make it easier for Black educators to be in spaces and places where you're teaching kids that look like us. Because let's face it, most inner city schools or, just public schools in general, majority of them are Black and brown children. And they need teachers. They need teachers that look like them because you don't see that. That's kind of like a rare thing. So, I mean, I think that ultimately is my why, is because I just want to see more of us educating more of us because we are needed in these times. It's getting a little wild, so.
No, I definitely agree. And if anything, I share that sentiment. Some of my most influential educators, they were individuals of color. I think about how many opportunities that I actually had to have an educator that was an individual of color, and I can count on the one hand. I'm someone who is still in school. I think about all of the years in academia under my belt, K through 12 plus higher education. I've been in higher education now for 7+ years, and again, I've maybe had 3 or 4 Black educators through that journey. And that, to say is wrong is an understatement.
It is.
There are so many things that I got from those individuals just by seeing someone who can relate to similar experiences as a younger individual, seeing someone that looked like me in a position of power, in a position of authority.
Right.
There were just so many things that came with that that it gave me hope.
Yeah.
And a lot of young kids these days that look like myself, they often lack that hope because it's hard to have that when you see so much of essentially inequality in the world and inequitable practices. It's hard to even imagine being in these spaces when you don't have a reference point to really point to of someone that is in that space that shares that same background as yourself. So I definitely appreciate hearing, stories like yours of individuals that didn't allow that stigma or didn't allow for, if anything, the lack of people looking like you to kind of push you out of that space. Because ultimately there is no other way of, getting into that space than slowly allowing more and more individuals of color into that. And we need to make sure that we're, if anything, making those safe spaces for those people to operate.
Exactly. And that's the thing, like it's clinging to a safe space, right? So I was just having this conversation like literally last night with my husband about Berea and how at the time of going there, like I didn't really appreciate the space that they had built for me as a Black person. Like there was a whole like Black student union, like we had Black pageants, like they truly embraced like you need a space to be authentically your best self and to learn from others around you. And so I left that space. I had wonderful Black professors, like shout out to Dr. Mack and Andrew Baskin, like the hardest professors I ever had in my life, like Dr. Antipak Harris. Like it just opened my mind to really understanding like the excellence that we have within ourselves and how we are these creators. We are unique, and just the things like that our people have gone through just for me to sit in this seat, right? Like people have literally died for us to even be having this conversation. And so it's like, when you think about education and you think about like the lack thereof of freedom that is built into the systems of education, it's built that way to keep you kind of like suppressed, right? Like I need you from the time you're 5 years old to sit in this chair and do all this work that I'm going to cram into your tiny little human brain. I need you to perform unstate tests. I need you like to eat your lunch. I need you to maybe have like some free time, maybe 20 or 30 minutes a day. And we're going to do this for about 7 hours. And I'm going to need you to do this 5 days a week. Like, think about that. You're already kind of grinding a kid's creativity kind of out in the earlier stages. So when you're thinking about it just in an umbrella context, because kindergarten can be very regimented, you know, think about how that looks now to that 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 black children in the room that are not doing well with sitting in a seat for 45 minutes, or, you know, and as you progress through education, it just, like I said, is presented in different ways to kind of keep you from accessing and excelling. And that's why, yes, having those safe spaces, like when I got to college, having that safe space was really what helped me identify, like, yo, this is straight up racism. Like, because it can be very subliminal. And like I always say, like, there's a gaslighting to racism, right? Like, it'll be in your face bold, like, you know it is. And then there's somebody out to the side like, but is it though? Like, you know, and so it's like this wheel constantly turning in the back of your mind. But I call it like the gaslight wheel. Like, it's you trying to not see things for what they really are. And I think that, you know, being an educator, a black educator, coming through a system that educated you to like basically perpetuate its bull mess, it takes an inner working. You really got to go through some stuff. Like, yo, I need to undo my internalized racism. I need to undo like these things, these concepts that have been kind of ingrained into me through the whiteness of education, because whiteness is the center in education. You know, a lot of people don't know. I laugh when we talk about a teacher shortage, right? Like, you hear that all the time. It's a shortage of teachers. And I'm like, it's been a shortage of teachers, yo. Like, when desegregation happened, you know, I believe our ancestors were fighting because we just wanted some equality in the materials we were receiving in our inner city schools. Because, you know, those schools, those community schools were like kind of like the central hubs of anything black community. The teachers were saw with regard. There was these black beautiful schools with black teachers, and we're just like, yo, we just want some materials, some resources, the same ones y'all giving to white kids down the street. And it's like, okay, you know, in a kind of watered down, you know, whatever form, boom, desegregation. Well, what it should have been is integration. So I'm not just gonna take now all the black kids from over here and then bust them out to these predominantly white schools. I'm going to put some white kids over here. I'm going to put some black kids over here. We're going to give each other an experience, right? But what happened is I not only took all the black kids from this community and bust them out to this predominantly white school where they're really not wanted, because, you know, we've seen Ruby Bridges. We've seen all that really happen. I'm also going to fire, like, all these black teachers, right? So just that quick, we went into a teacher shortage. The teacher shortage started when desegregation happened. And so now you have this predominantly white teaching workforce, right? And this small, tiny, itty bitty black and brown workforce. and you're teaching all children, right? So even in the inner city schools, even in these larger districts, even in our district, for example, like Cincinnati Public Schools, majority of our teachers are white. You know, now are they actively trying to do things to change that? Sure, maybe, you know, but right now that's where we are.
Right.
And so it's a thankless job. It is, but I feel like it's the most rewarding job because, like, I'm watching black and brown children realize their possibility. You know, that thing that, you know, like, oh, I can go do this. I can be something cool. Like, and that's what I feel like we lack in our schools. It's like there's so much going on into anti-blackness, right? Like, I need the other blackness that I'm not giving children the ability to realize their possibility. And so that it's almost like I say spinning on your head with nothing in it. It's a thing I hope to change, like, at least for my son. He's 2. I hope that by the time he comes to the realization that, you know, society sucks in a sense of that you're a black man and they don't see the value in you, the beauty in you, or what my professor used to call you guys rare precious jewels. Like, because you are rare precious jewels in society. And it is hard for society to accept that. And I feel like the more we tip into that, the worse things become. But I want better for him. I want better for all of, the black and brown children, because they deserve better. They deserve possibility. And it's hard to get that if there are not enough of us saying the same thing.
No, absolutely. I definitely share that same sentiment, and I want to kind of ask about a topic that I talked with on my first episode. I spoke with a buddy about education and public education kind of creating passive employees. When you talk about, basically what you're going to be doing for 5 days a week, and it's just basically 7 hours a day of you just doing this monotonous work, basically being told, hey, do this. There is no creativity. They're not really, like, if anything, asking you to be curious, to ask questions. They're just kind of telling you, this is what you'll do, this is how this is. And when I think about all of the jobs that I've had, I started working really early at like 15 and a half, my first job being at Kings Island. I was working in merchandise, and it's one of those where every job that I feel like I've had up until this point, with the exception of a few in the higher education space, I've been told pretty much, this is what you're going to do, this is how you need to do it, this is it. Like, I was never really given any freedom to ask questions, to kind of change policies or change procedures. It wasn't until I landed my first job working as a diversity ambassador for Ohio University that I was actually kind of given freedom to start my own program, to kind of get things off the ground and to let my creative wheels start spinning. And it's one of those, it's not lost on me that was done in a space of higher education where there's not a lot of individuals that look like me.
Right.
And this was my first time seeing those opportunities, of allowing those creative wheels to actually turn in a professional manner. And I know that there's so many individuals that could, if they're given the opportunity, essentially do the same thing that I did. They're able to flourish when given those resources and that opportunity to show that, hey, I can do something if you give me that platform and the opportunity.
Yep. And I 100% agree. And like that kind of ties into, where I am with my dissertation. It is titled A Seat at the, and in parentheses, IR there, table, because, in our culture, we are looking for freedom, like you said, and autonomy to be our most creative selves, because, we are creators. We created this country. Like, let's not mince words. Like, our ancestors tilled to the blood came out of their hands, sweat, tears, was getting beat, raped, all sorts of things to create this place that we live in. And, we are constantly crapped on, like, for that. And I feel like we kind of in our culture want to ultimately have autonomy. That's what you want. But the thing, like, preventing you from that autonomy and that creative space is this whiteness, this standard of whiteness, and it's something that we're never ever going to ascertain because our skin is brown. Like, it's just what it is. I say, it's almost like you're this unremovable stain to America. Like, if we could just tone down the blacks, then we can just live free, and everything will be cool. So, like, I'm gonna do stuff like pass these bills that are not going to allow you to have these honest conversations in schools, because that's creating too much black liberation and freedom, right? Like, because when we was out there marching, over, the riots in 2020 and the different things, I'm not going to call them riots. We was out there protesting, because they wasn't riots. They was protests because we tired of y'all killing us. So, boop. But when we were out there protesting in the streets, the kids was out there with us. They was right there with us. And so you're figuring out how to suppress liberation. And that's ultimately what it is. Because if truly black children are liberated, if all black people were liberated, then all people are liberated. Because that means that I've now recognized the humanity in you. I no longer see you as this thing that I just need to kind of get rid of to maintain my power and my position and my authority, because that's ultimately what it is. So yes, the system cranks out these passive students who then become passive employees. And it's not just white, teachers. Black teachers, any race has the ability to perpetuate racism. And it just looks differently, right? Like, but in how you perpetuate it. So you can be anti-black, and be a black person.
Oh, yeah.
That's how we see the police officers that beat up that black guy, the black kid, and they're all black. Like, because you have adopted a mindset where you hate yourself. You may not even recognize that you hate yourself, but it's been so ingrained into every piece of whatever you've gone through training wise, because the police, were created to take slaves back. You know what I'm saying? So, like, when you think about that, it may not be as presented as raw as that, but I'm still going to ingrain systemically, that's systemic racism, right, into all of the things to keep the cog, to keep the wheel going. And so now you have passive educators. You have educators that are going to come to work and be like, I'm just going to grind this out, do what I have to do, and go home because I'm burned out. I'm tired of fighting. I got to fight, here, there, especially black educators. Like, it's just a lot going on. And so, yes, it's doing what it's designed to do. It's doing the things to keep the thing going, right? So if you think of it, when you become passive and you've accepted, like, it is what it is, like, and you're no longer fighting against that, it's able to stay, it's able to sustain itself. And so anybody it brings in is going to churn it out. So either you're going to figure out a way to cling and be like, look, I don't need to go sit over there with them. I don't need to come sit at your table. And I'm going to just go over here and sit at my own, because the more you try to fight to get up there, to get this autonomy, to get this space, the more you're going to encounter not being yourself. So how much of yourself are you willing to give up to go sit over there? I'm not willing to sacrifice any more of myself anymore as a black woman, as a black educator. And so what I said to myself is, we should all get to that point. I don't have to sit up there. I don't have to sit over there. I don't have to do anything with you. I don't have to be here, because at the end of the day, I know my value and worth as a black person. I know my value and worth as a community. I know my value and worth as a culture. And you cannot thrive, unless I'm present. You can't, because that's how it's always been. That's our relationship right now. When you brought me over here, that was what it was. You needed to thrive, right? I needed to make money. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to capitalize off this human game. Y'all going to be slaves. I'm not paying nobody. I'm going to do what I got to do to sustain and move. And if you look at all of the things in our society, they all are built that way. It's all this capitalistic kind of like, oh, beat down, beat down, beat down. But the one thing that, keeps it in that regard is race. So if I'm going to put some sort of like height to whiteness, everything that falls under that, I can start to move things around and try to make you seem like, oh, if you get up here, you'll have, we'll let you. No, you won't. Why am I don't want to come up there. I'm good. I'll just go over here. And I feel like that's the table. That's trying to get away from the being passive, being just that person that's going to just sit and listen and let the thing continue. It's the resistance to, I'm not doing this anymore. I'll be out. I'll go do whatever I got to do to maintain my autonomy, to maintain my people's autonomy, to maintain my value, to maintain my worth. I'm not willing to trade that anymore. And I think that's ultimately any place that you work in, whether it's business, education, like how you said, when you got to get down there and do that diversity stuff and you were able to create, you felt alive. You felt, boom, this is me. This is what I need to be doing. I'm able to be my most authentic self. And the good thing about your college is they protected that space, right? And so that's allyship. It's somebody who's going to protect that space. That's a true ally. Is I'm willing to, sacrifice what my position at the table may be to protect your space. It's rare to find. Have I seen it? Yes, but it's very rare to find.
I know that it can be very rare to find that allyship, and if anything, I think that's why I've been so appreciative of it when I've gotten it in spaces. And when I think about the spaces, especially the comment that you said where individuals of color can also benefit from white supremacy and white supremacist practices. I often use the saying, not all skin folk are kinfolk. And I think to individuals right now, literally changing the landscape of our laws, Justice Clarence Thomas, I think of the affirmative action decision that was just made and his hand in that. And we know that there are certain people that allow practices to continue to perpetuate, not because their skin color is essentially what makes their decision on that legislation or anything like that. It's the benefits that they get from it. We talk now about Harlan Crow and how it's kind of been shown that he's basically bought Clarence Thomas. Like he owns a Supreme Court justice. To think that you're a billionaire out there today owning a black man, a Supreme Court justice, that's wild. And we talk about it, as if it's not an egregious thing like it is. It's just like common news.
It is.
And so this
it's not
world,
common news to me. I'm like, you know what I mean? But yes, I get it. Like, it's like we are talking about it. Like, it's like, y'all, like, why are we not, like, this is wild. Like, it is literally what you just said. He owns a Supreme Court slave. That's what
basically, it's just one of those wild. Where this is the same individual that can literally impact whether or not our laws remain the laws of the land. And it's just like, hey, I'm in the pocket of so-and-so taking financial bribes, things like that. They don't even have it where our Supreme Court currently has to do financial disclosures. No. And it was to the point where he's having to disclose the houses, cars, like his, I think it was Justice Clarence Thomas's mother is still living in a home owned by Harlan Crow, who doesn't pay any kind of utilities, rent, anything like that. She just lives in Harlan Crow's house. You know why? Because she's a part of the family, because she's owned just like Clarence Thomas is. So it's one of those where when that's the world that we live in, and you don't have to be extremely educated like yourself or myself or have any kind of degree to figure that out. You can just watch the news and learn that. It's just, how do we continue to tell young individuals of color that I guess we can succeed by pushing each other forward when we have individuals that look just like us, but are, I guess, pushing the envelope in a different direction with resources that we can't even imagine.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. It's almost like a moth to a flame, right? Like the saying of the moth to a flame, the moth is attracted to the light because it's light. It's beautiful, but the closer and closer it gets, the flame consumes the moth. And and often moths don't fly directly into flames. It's like a slow burning death. It's horrible to watch a moth die. But like the again, going back to this notion of this table, right? That's the flame. It's like, if I could just, get up there, and if I could just like touch it, if I could just get, the houses, the cars, the wealth, the things, like I am going to be seen and treated as an equal. And in some regard, you are, but you're also a pawn. You know what I mean? Because we're not playing checkers. We're playing chess, my guy. Like, you are a purchased pawn. And whenever I'm done using you, because you're never going to be up here with me, like, it's a buy-in, right? Like, the buying into the concept of whiteness, which, if you know anything about CRT, whiteness as property is like one of their tenets. And so they look at it in terms of like, as long as I have white skin, whiteness, I can benefit from the privileges and things that are associated with whiteness, money, wealth, status, you know what I mean? Like, and I'm going to benefit off of those things in those spaces and places. Now, like you said, a black person can perpetuate Clarence Thomas. So can, any other brown person, Latino, Israel, like anybody of color that is not white, you can do the same things Clarence Thomas is doing, because it all comes back to the end of the day that you bought into whiteness. And again, the more you buy in, the more of you have to trade out, right? Because you're never going to be able to be your most authentic self up there. You're not. It's going to be to a point where you don't even know who you are anymore because you've internalized so much of what they're saying about you that you believe it. You believe that you're less than. You believe that you're different from those black people. Like, no, you're not. So, Clarence Thomas, you're okay. You know, or for example, all of the Latinos in the Florida community, you were okay with voting for DeSantis. You know, now DeSantis been doing stuff to us for I don't know how long. We like, y'all don't vote for him. Don't vote for him. What y'all do? Y'all go vote for him. Look up the statistics. Now he's passed a law where you can't even have your cousin living with you if they are an undocumented person. That's bananas. That's crazy because at the end of the day, you bought in. You bought into whiteness. Mm-hmm. You bought in, Clarence. You bought in. When you buy into that, it's only so far it's going to take you. But again, I liken it as a moth to a flame because I'm going to think I'm going to touch it. I'm thinking I'm going to get close, but no, because as soon as I let you up here, then I got to let everybody else up here, and I'm not doing that. Mm-hmm. You know, when you think of how these billionaires and things are structured, think about, I always liken it to the Titanic. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, they had 12 people on a boat. Like, you could have put more people, could have saved more people. Granted, as we talk about the Titanic, were there some black people there? Probably, but they will never talk about it because technically we weren't supposed to be there. But when you think about it, they don't have to talk about it because we weren't supposed to be there. So if we was there, guess what? We gone. You can't get
just because you mentioned the Titanic, I want to throw this out there because I did see this and it was one of those things where it threw me for a loop. Mm-hmm. I never actually watched the Titanic movie mm-hmm. with Leonardo DiCaprio, mm-hmm. but they always, you know, talk about the scene with him and the girl like mm-hmm. basically drifting on like that mm-hmm. that piece of floating debris. And it was recently published in the news this past year that whole story and the way that they got that was actually due to an Asian man that was, you know, hanging on for dear life after the Titanic. Mm-hmm. And that was his story. He survived. Mm-hmm. And so they literally whitewashed this Asian narrative of this man that was like, you know, hanging on for dear life on this debris. They actually, it's going to be a documentary on Netflix here soon. I wish I knew the name so that I could quote it on this podcast. I'll have to put it in the details or something and link it. But basically, they showed that this man, he didn't really talk about it even to his kids, things like that. They had to go through documents and saw on the ship log that he was actually there on the ship and that this actually was, you know, him on this floating debris that they had documents and records from. Wow. It was just something that he never talked about, and he had actually passed away by that time, the man that it happened to. But his son was like going through the documents and talking to like NBC News for the documentary and everything like that. And he was like, my dad was always this stoic man. He didn't really talk about the things that he went through, stuff like that. But it was just like, I never knew that this was a part of his story, and his history was just whitewashed like that and turned into a major motion picture that has, you know, grossed millions, if not, I don't know how much. Because again, I've never seen Titanic, but I know that it was one of those box office hits, and it's just like, essentially, whitewashing can often become a box office hit, and that's how it's gone in America. Like whitewashing is our box office hit.
We're whitewashing. If you think about like when you were in school, right, and like you would go to history, and like they didn't call the Native Americans Native Americans; they was calling them Indians. And then you would look in your book, and it would be this man, and he would just be like, that's so stereotypical. Like, and you think about it, like, that's exactly what they're doing. That's what they're doing. They're trying to distance themselves from the foul stuff that they've done, right? Like, so if I gotta sell it, I gotta repackage it and whitewash it up so you can feel good about it. Like, instead of really looking at it for what it is, like, why are we looking at the savages? Why are you talking about these people like that? Like, y'all didn't come over here and just wipe all of them out, like Trail of Tears. Like, I mean, come on, y'all. Like, but you're not making those connections. Like, and even when you think about like Black people, right? Like, how many times did you learn about, you know, all of the different massacres that happened around the United States? Like, you bombed whole communities, like, because of their ability to function on their own, and it's like wild. So when you think about whitewashing, all they're doing is making it palatable because I can't present it in the context like if I presented it in that context of an Asian man clinging for his life in these Arctic waters in the same Titanic movie where you watch people literally putting 12 people on a boat, like, I'm gonna be enraged, right? Because it's like, how dare you? You know what I mean? Like, are you serious? Like, you just left, and it's really how dare you anyway.
Oh yeah.
But when you put the actual thing out there and I make you see it, and I make you see it for what it is, it's hard for you to turn away and not something, you know, whether it's a white person watching it or not, there's going to be something that evokes within you. What that something is, you know, it could be like, yeah, bait them, or it could be like, you know, oh my gosh, it's horrible. You know what I mean? But I think that's what America does. It wants to keep presenting this palatable thing, this nice, beautiful, wrapped up in a bow history, you know, or the things that have happened, the atrocities, to make it seem like, oh, it's not that bad. It's okay.
Yeah, I think you're spot on there. Yeah. I don't have to disagree with you on much of anything there. But just to kind of move the conversation along so we can talk a little bit about this, because I'm definitely fascinated by like your master's in divinity. I actually have another friend with a master's degree in theology, and while I was raised Christian, as an adult, I don't know that I would say I subscribe or identify with any religion. I'm definitely a rather like spiritual person with my views and thoughts when it comes to what comes after this life, but none that I feel like you would ever find in a scripture or a textbook. Having taken the time to like formally study religion, has it impacted or changed the ways that you've viewed your own religion or spirituality?
Yeah, most definitely. I think when I began my journey, I would kind of describe myself as more of like, you know, oh my gosh, this is wrong. Like, what's wrong is wrong. You know, what the drills. Like, if you're gay, you're going to hell. If you, you know, feel like you don't love Christ and you're any other religion, you're going to hell. If you have sex outside of marriage, you're going to hell. So it's like this whole, like, you know, fear of being yourself, right? Because ultimately, like, life, like, come on, y'all, like, but it's very restrictive. And I think the thing that seminary taught me was that restrictiveness. Like, God is not a restrictive God. I feel like he wants you to seek after him. He is restrictive in the sense of you have committed yourself to him. I'm not going to allow you to just go, you know, wild. I'm going to give you choices, because at the end of the day, you still have to choose my path, you know, over all other paths. Like, and that path could be, you know, you faced with an option of stealing, or, you know, like, how are you going to navigate? How are you going to, you know, put more positivity out into the world? Because that's essentially what I believe God to be. And that's kind of where seminary has positioned me. Like, I identify as a Christian. You know, I do believe in Jesus Christ. I do believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God. But I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe in the Trinity. But do I believe that someone who believes different from me is going to hell? No, I don't. I don't believe that, because I don't believe my God to be someone who would just chop away like all his people like that those people that believe in Buddhism, or those people that believe in different types of religions, like, how is it to say that what their belief is, if it's putting positive, if it's putting love out into the world, is wrong? Like, how can I can't, you know, and I remember my first year in seminary, my dad, I came home and I was like in there doing one of my, like, you know, if you do this, like, you know, this is what's going to happen. And my dad was like, Santana, what do you think heaven's going to look like? Like, you truly think, like, the God that you serve is going to just say, oh, because you didn't do this or you didn't do that, you're just going to bow? And I was just like, well, yeah, because that's what the Bible says. And, you know, like, that's what, but it's not what the Bible says. It's what you're taught, right? But, like, reading the Bible, having to really sit with who Jesus was as a person, how they persecuted him, the types of things that he went through. Jesus's journey is more of, like, I have a gift. I have this thing that can heal you, right? Like, I'm popping up, like, in cities, like, bow, heal, bow. Like, I'm out here performing miracles. I'm doing it before people, like, and they still didn't, want to receive the truth. It is what it is, but that the thing with God is your choice in that. Like, because in other religions, in Muslim, religion, like, they believe differently. They believe that he wasn't who he say he was. But I can't say that you're wrong, because I can't say that. I cannot definitively say that. Because what I've come to understand about Jesus is what I've come to understand about him. And what you've come to understand about your, Messiah, or however you view religion, is what you've come to understand. And so at the end of the day, that's not for me to conquer, right? Because I think that's the part of Christianity that nobody really likes to talk about, is the crusade part of Christianity. Like, because that really happened. Like, real talk. Like, the crusade, you going and you just knocking it down, and we about to learn about Jesus, like, and you just wow, like, and even how it was presented to slaves, like, now the argument often comes up, like, well, Christianity is white man's religion. Yeah, to a degree, but your own personal experience with God and Jesus should be what guides you, not what the white man has told you. Because granted, how many of us have gone to private schools or all these other schools, and what do you see there? This white Jesus, or this white, Mary Magdalene, or this white Mother of Mary. It's just all these white people. And you're like, there's no way y'all were living over where the sun is beating down on you constantly with this white ashen glow. There's no possible way. It's not possible. It's impossible, actually. So what Jesus looked like is me and you. But I can't present it to you like that, right? Because that's going to empower you. It's going to embolden you. It's going to be like, hold on, bro. It's all power. So, yes, I do believe that, Christianity, it has been utilized as a tool to, continue to assert the dominance of whiteness and centering whiteness in our society. But I also believe that Christ is real, and I believe his journey is real, and I believe God, and I believe in the Holy Spirit. I believe all of these things, but I think that the way it's just presented to us is so that we're not thinking like outside of the frame. Like, I believe the big boom happened. I think our sense of time, and like God's sense of time is two different types of time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, his blink of an eye is like a billion years for us. So who's not to say, our time is our thing. It's our construct. We created it so we can keep track of stuff. But really, what is time to God? I'm God. Like, you know what I mean? So I think that's really ultimately what seminary did for me. And it just really kind of opened up my own, scope and arena around God and what is love. Like, can a man love another man? Sure. And at this point in the game, love to me is love, because I believe God is love. And I've had these arguments with my mom. I've had so many different things, like with people around me, and they're going to believe what they want to believe. Like, even my aunts, like, they're very, like, hardcore Christians. Not that my mom wouldn't accept. I do believe my mom has reached this point of acceptance. Okay. I can at least say that. But I think that ultimately, especially within the Black community, because we're so already othered, and if you look at your church as this kind of affinity space where it's like you see people that look like you and are like you, it should be all inclusive of all people, no matter what they believe as far as sexual orientation, or if they're having fornication outside of marriage, or if they had a kid outside of wedlock. Because you know what? Stuff happens. Life happens. Like, we're needing to look at humanity, or people, for their humanity. I'm a human. I'm not some perfect, creature that's going to be like, I will never. Like, and the more you ascertain, or you ascribe, to that notion, what happens to yourself? You're less like yourself. And that's what I believe is the whiteness part of Christianity. It's when you start to subtract from your own identity, like, no. And I believe a lot of churches have yet to kind of overcome that space in a truly authentic way, which is why a lot of us are not going to church. I honestly believe that, because church should be more about healing. It should be more about pouring in. It should be more about community, right? Like, we could be having church right now. The Bible says when 2 or 3 are gathered. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think of the friendships that I have when we sit in groups and we're laughing and just consoling each other. That's a form of church. You are presenting positivity out into the world. You're presenting healing, right? And that's what the church has lost. They've lost healing. And so when I got out of seminary and I kind of just was thrown back into the world, right? Like of church, trying to find a church home and trying to like, it was wild because I'm like, yo, this ain't just what we talked about. Like, you know, and I don't want to be here. So I'm honestly, I've not been going to church. And there are people that are like, oh, you should try this one, you should try that one. But I, you know, I would joke, my mentor, Stephanie, who I met in seminary, like the call of my life as a pastor. And I would joke, you know, well, it's not joke, it's real because I did go to seminary. I can pastor, but I don't think that I want to be that traditional type of pastor that's like standing up in a pulpit, like, yeah, like I'm not that. I'm relatable, yo, like, you know, you want to smoke some whatever, that's you, like, you want to drink, you want to live, like, I'm not, as long as it's not controlling your life, right? Like, because that's really where it is. I just want to relate. I want to pour into you. I want to be a positive person in your life because, you know, out here, there's not much. There's not much positivity. I want you to win. I want to get to the end of this race.
I definitely understand getting to the end of the race. And if anything, this race feels like a marathon, especially when we consider everything that goes into it. And it's really been refreshing just to hear your take on religion and spirituality. I feel like myself, one of the reasons that I kind of got out of the church is it did leave, or I guess lose that community feeling. And it really wasn't much about healing. It felt like to me it was almost more about that passive, do this, do that, this is the way that your life is going to be. And it didn't really allow for, especially with religion, where when you ask certain questions, just because it is faith-based at the end of the day, there aren't necessarily, solid answers.
Right.
So I pivoted away, not having those solid answers, not feeling like it was really contributing to like my healing or my journey. If anything, just feeling that it brought more of a detriment, just with the mental space that I feel like it put me in.
Yeah.
I just had to kind of walk away and, if anything, heal from that. So I understand that places do need to change their thought process on kind of what the church is there for. And I appreciate you saying, just church and worship can be, just 2 and 3 people getting together and, spreading that positivity because at the end of the day, I don't believe that you necessarily need a mega church to go worship. I don't even necessarily believe that you need a specific place that you go to every Sunday. If you go with people that you can kind of relate to, build that community with, and if anything, worship with, I think that you can make church wherever you are.
Yeah, and that's really what it is. It's about a healing, right? Like, you want to be able to go to a space, again, to present your most authentic self and to be embraced in that. Like, and I think about how hard it is to cultivate those spaces, especially for Black people, like, to just come and be authentically themselves, because there are not many places that are like that. Like, I can't come to church and present myself as most authentic sometimes because, people may judge me for this, and everyone's not on the same, space when it comes to spirituality. And it's like, when that's your focus and you're losing less, focus on the healing aspect of it, right? Like, what am I presenting to you? What do I ultimately want you to come from, and away from this space with? And it's ultimately a oneness with yourself, a wholeness with yourself. Because in order for you to truly, I feel like, serve God in the capacity that He chooses all of us to serve Him, you do have to find a space of oneness. And it's like, but how many places are truly going to cultivate that place, that space, and your most authentic self? Because it's still going to go back to, like, I got to pull this out of here to attack you with this. And that's not what the scripture was built to do. And I feel like a lot of people don't even know, like, the Bible and how it was put together. Like, there's books out there that did not make the Bible cut. You know what I mean? So what about those? Do you consider those invalid? Like, how come those aren't in here? But a lot of us don't even know that. A lot of us don't have access to that information or even know where to begin to access that information. And that's what I feel like church should be doing. It should be giving you the tools to navigate our world, because there are things that are happening, that we will never be able to comprehend, that we can't see. I always say that, they say that there's war in the heavenlies and, all of this. That's real. Like, I do believe that evil and good are always at war. And however that looks to you is however it looks to you. But there are things that are happening that I don't feel like as a people we've been able to really tap into and attune ourselves with, because we don't know. Mm-hmm. We don't have the tools, right? Like, we're still operating in, like, if you going to hell if you have sex outside of marriage, and, all my singles need to just be happy in their singleton. Like, I used to hate that in church. I mean, be real. Like, I'm single. I'm getting older. I know that my biological clock is ticking, and you're trying to sell me, married person, right? I need to be happy in my singledom. Where are the single people telling me to be happy in my singledom? That's 70, 80, because they ain't been single all 80 years. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, how can you look somebody and say, be single, be happy? Like, that mindset is wild to me. Instead of giving me the actual tools on what, a man and a woman need, or a man and a man, or anyone needs to date and navigate this society. That's really what you should be talking about. Like, how do I navigate and find someone who is going to love me for my authentic self? That's what you should be teaching. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? Like, but it's just not constructed and built for that. Like, and I feel like the more you, again, that moth to a flame, we trying to get into this space and place. It's just not. Religion was used in these states to keep us compliant. You know what I mean? Like, most of us couldn't even read a Bible because you weren't supposed to be reading as a slave. So it's like, when you really think about a lot of the structures of the church and the structures of slavery, the structures of capitalism, like, it all plays into each other. That's why you got prosperity preachers like, yo, just drop 10 grand and you can't turn your lights on. Like, you should not be asking me to give you my last dime out of my pocket so that you can flourish and ride a jet from here. What are we doing? That's not what you're supposed to do as a shepherd. You're not supposed to be like, yo, I got this full, sheep's skin coat on. I'm sheepskin down, right? Like, because that's what you are. You're a shepherd to your flock of sheep, right? I'm sheepskin down, and then I'm gonna go look at the last sheep who got a little bit of tiny fur left. Yo, I'm gonna need that up off you too. The last little bit of wool, so I can be even more sheep down. I'm sheep down already. Yeah. Why are you coming back here, sir? Why are you sheep down? That's the other question. Why are you sheep down? That's, so like, it is a wolf in sheep's clothing. That's what I imagine. Because you wouldn't ask that of your flock. You shouldn't. I shouldn't be dependent upon your tithes. Granted, should you pay tithes? Should you help your pastor? Yes, but I shouldn't be helping my pastor buy no Mercedes Benz.
Yeah.
I shouldn't be helping my pastor. What I should be helping my pastor do is maybe, get a larger space so I can bring more people in here. Mm-hmm. And we can just have some honest conversations and we can heal. And my pastor, yes, I'm putting work into this, but if you truly are doing the work, you should have other people that are able to replicate what you're doing. Because they're healed, right? If I'm in the business of healing, I've healed you, boom. You've learned how to heal. Should you be able to go heal somebody else?
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. So I ain't got to be in here healing all 500 of y'all because I trust you to go heal. You're healed. You're healed. But see, we lost that. Mm-hmm. We lost that. Now I can't be healed, so I'm sheep down. I got to get the last little bit of wool off my sheep, because I got to be out here. I'm doing the work. That's the says pay 10%. Give 10% of your check. Give 10% of your. But why? Why are we so fixated? Yes, 10% of tithes to the warehouse, but then that also meant the storehouse where if I didn't have something in the winter, I could pull up and be like, yo, I ain't got no wool. And guess what my pastor's supposed to do? Give me some wool. But I'm not going to do that if I'm too focused on being sheep down. Like, I'm not trying to give you no wool. You see what I'm saying? And so that's where we've gotten away from. And I feel like seminary, I feel like everyone's journey is different, but that's what I've learned. That's what I carry with me. And so, my goal is in life, anybody who ever meets me or hears me or, whatever, I just want them to know that you can do it. That you are okay being your most authentic, jacked up self. Whatever that looks like, whatever you're bringing to the party, it's okay. Because as long as you're bringing your best, that's all we can ask for, right? Mm-hmm. And I want you to be healed. I just want people to be healed. I want people to walk away from conversations with me feeling a little bit better about themselves, feeling like I can do this. I'm doing what I'm doing, and I'm glowing doing what I'm doing, because that's what it's creating. That's what I want. Get away from this notion that you got to sit up there with them. Mm-hmm. You don't. Our ancestors built that table. You can go build another one. You got the power in you to go build another one. Just like she got the power. He got the power. Black people, you have the power. Stop waiting for somebody to liberate you. Liberate yourself. It's in there. You just got to be in a space that's going to protect it. Find you some people that's going to protect you. Find some black people that's going to say, yes, be authentically you. And you find some white people, if you find them out there, the allies, because I'm talking to you, you're going to help protect those black people, because when black people are liberated, all people are liberated, because you are now saying that as a white person who at some point in time ascribed to the lies of whiteness, I'm now turning away from that, because I realize that in order for us to truly be successful as a country, in order for us to truly be successful in life, I have to turn away from that and say, I'm going to embrace the humanity in all people, because if I can do that, then we're good. You're not going to work me till I'm dead.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So it's all playing into each other at the end of the day. And if it's nothing anyone else gets from me, you love God, love people. You can't say you love God if you don't love people. And you need to love each other. You need to love people that look like you. I tell my girlfriends all the time, black women, healed black women, don't have problems with other black women. You need to go resolve them conflicts, because if you truly are healed, you need to find some resolution. Now, does that mean that you may go on from that and be BFFs again or whatever? No, even with your mothers, whatever. You have to find resolution. You got to find peace, because you can't have things pulling away from you and what you can do to create. Because the more you putting out energy into those negative or those other spaces, the less likely you are to be able to be your most authentic self. And so walk away and knowing that. And I know what you're doing here. It's gonna blow up, and I'm blessed. Let me just say that now, that I'm here, because when it blows up, I was here first. Hey, and it's gonna be great. And I feel that you're giving black people the ability to come here and tell their story and be their most authentic selves, and that's what needs to be protected, and that's what people need.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And honestly, I could not have asked for a more thought-provoking conversation. And I cannot wait to see the ways in which our audience is going to weigh in on this topic. So I definitely, from the bottom of my heart, have to say thank you, Santana, for coming on. And for everybody, as always, I've been your host, Marius Lancaster. And thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious, stay engaged, and never stop seeking the truth.